Hey, we're back. How are you? Wow, my voice kind of changed there a little. It's like I could do like voice impressions or something. That's another time for another channel. You know the little spiel. But in talking with a good friend of mine, he's actually one of my best friends, Killdeer25. He's actually recording this for me right now. We were talking. He's like, you should really make a video on why you got into photography. And I was like, actually, this is a pretty good idea. And now before we begin, I know you've already heard in my first video, which was super cringe, by the way. Like, I can't even go back and watch because like I just was so awkward and just I was like a statue. And he actually makes fun of me for it all the time. But I wanted to get more in depth as to like what got me started in photography. So let's rewind the clocks all the way back to 2003. If you can even go back that far with me, when I was 14 years old, my mom asked me, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I was sitting there like, all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm like, I want a camera. Like I want an actual camera. And so then when I was talking with a family member of mine, they're like, "Oh, make sure you tell her that you want to get a digital camera instead of a film camera." So I told that to her. I was like, "I want a digital camera instead of a film camera." She's like, "Okay." And so she got me this. It was a Fujifilm FinePix camera with one of those little slider things you had to move to get the camera lens to pop out. It was a point-and-click camera. I don't have the camera anymore, unfortunately. But this thing was like the most ghetto digital camera you could ever imagine. But it did a lot of cool things. Like it did video. Had different other settings, like the scenic shots and everything. But I remember just messing around with that for a while. But then I kind of got away from photography for a number of years. So I was in ninth grade at that point. But then after high school, I wanted to go buy another camera. So I was doing a lot of research for like at least a couple months, and I found a great camera. I actually did a YouTube short about it. I'll post a link to it like right here as an iCard. It was my first digital camera. Now I took this thing everywhere. Like this thing, I would stick it in my pocket. I was kind of known as the annoying videographer in my singles ward, in my singles congregation. And so this thing, like, as you'll be able to see in that little YouTube short, this thing has so many dings and dents. Like, I took this thing everywhere, and so it was like my lifeline for the longest time. And so it was kind of funny, like, because I would take photos, I would get really into it. I would go like, "Yeah, this is such a cool shot." Like, "Oh, I'm such a professional." I remember even submitting them to some shots to like a volunteer like page for like different scenic shots, and more than half of my shots got denied. Like, and the reasoning was like, "We have similar shots, so we are denying these certain shots." And so obviously, I got a little deflated. I was like, I got a little butthurt. If you could picture me as a cartoon, I guess just like, woe is me, kind of thing. But then I got really into mobile photography. I was working at McDonald's at the time, and I joined. It's like what I said in the Instagram video I posted. Again, I'll put another iCard right here about that. But I joined Instagram first for a girl. I know, it's pretty cheesy and cliche. You start something for a girl. But then I really started getting into it. Like I would take just a whole lot of shots on my phone. At the time I was using an HTC Evo 4G, not an iPhone. And I really got into it. And at the time I was working at McDonald's. And when you work at McDonald's, anyone who has worked at McDonald's or in fast food in general, you get treated like garbage. Anyone can relate to that. And so how I would feel better about myself is I would get home out of work, and I would just tell my family, I'll be gone. I'm just gonna go take photographs. And so I would literally just like walk around taking photographs of different cool things. And then back in 2016, my oldest brother approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever considered doing this professionally?" And I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Like, everybody in the state of Utah, everybody and their brother is a photographer, or a wannabe photographer. And so I kind of shot it down. I was like, I'm not interested. I just want to do this as a hobby. But then I remembered thinking about that the next day, or like the next week. It could have been next week. I'm like, that actually sounds kind of fun. Like, being a professional photographer, saying like, I'm a photographer. Like, this is what I do. Like, I know what I'm doing. And so I decided to take him up on it. I got my first DSLR, which is the Canon Rebel. I talked about it in the last video, so if you haven't watched that, there's gonna be another iCard like right there. Now, being a photographer, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, you know, getting your camera and taking a photograph. You have to do a lot of practice. You have to do a lot of, you know, research on being a photographer. And honestly, there's a lot of competition. So really my main reason for getting into photography is this. I wanted to bring some light to a world that was full of darkness. I wanted to capture moments in time for people so that in the future they could go back and say, oh yeah, that was such a great moment when we had that, you know, our family was so happy at that point, you know, this person was still here, that person was here. And I wanted to be able to bring that happiness into people's lives. And to be honest with you, there's no greater feeling as a photographer than when after you take the shot, you take it into whatever editing program you use. I use Lightroom and Photoshop. But then when you start to see your creation come to life, that is one of the most rewarding things that you can imagine as a photographer. You know, it really kicks in the endorphins and just seeing your stuff come to light. Like, to be honest with you, there's a photograph that I'll put it up right here. I took this shot back when I was a newbie photographer, if I can get the words out of my mouth. And it was a sunset shot. We have here in Davis County, Utah, we have this bird sanctuary out in the western part of Davis County, which is out that way. And I was waiting for a client, and so I took these shots, and then I went back in and I was like, oh, that could be a potential good shot. And I started editing on it. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna push this aside for a while. And then like a year later, it's like, oh yeah, I never finished this shot. And so this shot turned out to be amazing. And I loved this shot so much that I was worried that someone would steal it. So I copyrighted it. I named it Light at the End, because you'll see by this photo right here why I say light at the end. And that was such a rewarding experience to me. And Killdeer, who's filming this, he can attest to this, that this shot was amazing. And honestly, photography is always been a passion of mine. You know, I love taking photographs. Even as a little kid, I can't even recall, you know, messing around with my mom's film camera, messing around with my older siblings' film cameras. You know, it was just, so photography, videography, it's always been a part of my life. Now, if you got value out of this, you'll get value out of this one right here, this video right here, where I talk about how to better improve your Lightroom skills. So make sure you head on over there, and I'll catch you over there. See you over there.